The Committee on Oversight and Accountability will come to order. I want to welcome everyone to the hearing today. Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time. I recognize myself for the purpose of making an opening statement. Today's hearing is an opportunity to gather facts about the border crisis from career law enforcement officials from the U.S. Border Patrol. Make no mistake, the state of our border is in crisis. Jay Johnson, the Secretary of Homeland Security under President Obama, once said that 1,000 apprehensions per day overwhelms the system. In 2019, he said, and I quote, "I cannot begin to imagine what 4,000 a day looks like." So we are truly in a crisis. Unfortunately, we're witnessing that now, and it's truly a crisis. In fiscal year 2022, over 6,000 migrants per day on average were apprehended after illegally crossing the border. That's over 2.2 million apprehensions in just a 12-month period. In just the first 3 months of fiscal year 2023, over 7,000 migrants per day on average were apprehended after illegally crossing the border. Those numbers don't include hundreds of thousands of aliens who evade apprehension entirely, estimated at almost 600,000 just in fiscal year 2022. And reports indicate nearly 300,000 illegal immigrants have evaded apprehension just 4 months into fiscal year 2023. President Biden and his administration have created the worst border crisis in American history. Cartels are leveraging chaos at the border. They are using their human smuggling operations to overwhelm U.S. Border Patrol agents with large migrant groups, often placing migrants in peril. They create these diversions at the expense of human life to traffic dangerous narcotics like fentanyl across our southern border. These deadly drugs then make their way into communities across the United States and poison our neighbors and our children. Why? Why is this happening? Starting on his first day in office, President Biden signaled to the world our borders were open. Open to criminals, human traffickers, and drug traffickers. His administration's policies have eroded deterrence and stripped away enforcement tools. President Biden immediately ended enrollments in the migrant protection protocols, which required inadmissible aliens to remain in Mexico while their immigration case was adjudicated. He halted construction of border barriers even though Congress had appropriated nearly $1.4 billion for wall construction just a month before. He issued a press release announcing a new immigration bill proposal that would give amnesty, which is legal status and a path to citizenship, to millions of illegal immigrants in the United States, signaling to the world that breaking our laws would not lead to detention and removal. President Biden's Department of Homeland Security issued a memorandum instituting a 100-day moratorium on deportations for most illegal aliens and limiting ICE's ability to enforce the law. ICE arrests plummeted almost immediately by more than 60%. All of these actions Biden and his administration took on his first day of office. Secretary Mayorkas doubled down on these policies by issuing a memorandum restricting law enforcement's ability to enforce the law against illegal immigrants. Even though a federal court has said that the executive branch cannot override clear congressional commands in the law through these memos, President Biden's administration is still fighting in the courts on the side of illegal immigrants, not the American people. Administration officials continue to say they are creating a, quote, safe and orderly, humane immigration system. But reality contradicts this propaganda. Conditions at the border are dangerous, chaotic, and inhumane. Fiscal year 2022 set records for the number of arrests of illegal border crossers, the number of migrants who died making the journey, the number of dangerous narcotics seized, and even the number of suspected terrorists arrested trying to illegally cross the southern border. And given over 500,000 people have evaded apprehension entirely, the national security risks are extremely high. This administration must do more to protect our southern border. They must do more to protect the American people. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today about their efforts to secure our southern border against illegal immigration, drug and human trafficking, and prevention of terrorist entries, as well as how the border crisis is making those efforts more difficult for the men and women under their command. Thank you all so much for being here to testify, and I yield now to Ranking Member Raskins for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the witnesses for appearing today. The purpose of oversight is to collect facts that will allow us to legislate effectively to promote the common good and solve the nation's problems. Today we're looking at the border, but the majority has offered no clarity as to what their solutions are to address what they believe to be the problems with immigration and the border. The existence of a border is not in itself problematic and never has been. Neither is immigration a problem, for we are an immigrant society, except for the descendants of slaves brought here involuntarily, or Native Americans who've been here for millennia. We are all descendants of immigrants. People have wanted to come to America as long as the nation or the idea of the nation has existed, for we are a land premised on opportunity and freedom and dedicated to the proposition that all of us are created equal. When Tom Paine got over here 2 years before the Revolution, he fell in love with the promise of America. He said it would become an asylum to humanity. Not an insane asylum, mind you, but a place of refuge for people fleeing religious, political, and economic persecution. The traditional interest in coming to America has spread, deepened, and intensified recently as political democracy, civil freedom, basic public safety, and meaningful economic opportunity have come under ferocious attack and pressure in nations in our hemisphere like Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, Mexico, and Nicaragua. Our basic problem is a political one. Legal channels of immigration have been choked off in the wake of congressional failure to act in bipartisan fashion on immigration policy. That's despite the fact that we badly need workers in many sectors and many parts of the country to fill the jobs that drive our economy. Under President Biden's economic boom, we are seeing record employment growth and the lowest unemployment rate in more than a half century. Since Biden came into office, America has created millions and millions of new jobs. Multiple reports suggest that creating new legal pathways to citizenship would only enhance our current economic progress by increasing the GDP by up to $1.7 trillion over the next 10 years, raising wages for all and creating hundreds of thousands more new jobs. But this won't be possible without comprehensive immigration reform embodying the kind of progress that the administration and congressional Democrats have been fighting for. The political problem is that when it comes to working out common sense immigration policy solutions, Republicans driven by the extreme MAGA wing of their party have been systematically thwarting and derailing comprehensive efforts to improve our immigration system and strengthen border enforcement. In 2007, Republicans blocked bipartisan legislation which would have significantly increased border enforcement capacity and provided legal status and a pathway to citizenship for approximately 12 million undocumented immigrants living in the United States. In 2013, when Senate Democrats and Republicans again came together to pass a strong, comprehensive immigration reform plan that would have provided unprecedented resources for border security, including 40,000 additional Border Patrol agents, and created a pathway to citizenship for millions of workers, the Republican-controlled House threw a monkey wrench into the bipartisan collaboration and refused to hold a vote. Since then, Democrats have repeatedly developed, proposed, and sometimes passed pragmatic legislative solutions to address border security while providing practical pathways to citizenship for people like the Dreamers, hundreds of thousands of young people brought to American childhood who are now productively engaged in school or work or military service. Such proposals include the parole program that President Biden implemented last month, which has reduced unlawful entries and cut border apprehensions of Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans by 97%. We have proposed aggressive coordination with our allies abroad to block the flow into our country of fentanyl carried by criminals, most of whom are, alas, American citizens. We have advanced policies to promote sustained economic growth and stability throughout Latin America so that desperate people and families do not need to migrate to the southern border in search of a future safe from violent gangs, authoritarian governments, and grinding poverty. The facts show that President Biden and the Democratic Congress surged $7.3 billion in funding and resources to the southern border at the end of last year. In December, Democrats bolstered border security by sending billions to CBP and Border Patrol, including money to hire 300 additional Border Patrol agents, millions of dollars to provide more personnel to our ports of entry, and over $200 million for between the ports technology to detect drug smugglers and human traffickers. And overwhelmingly, House Republicans did not support us. Yet rather than work with Democrats on these efforts, the MAGA forces in the GOP have chosen to abandon the strong pro-immigration stance of Abraham Lincoln and Ronald Reagan and instead spread fear about a foreign invasion, dangerous paranoia about the racist and anti-Semitic Great Replacement mythology, and disinformation about fentanyl, the vast majority of which is brought into our country by American smugglers working for the international drug cartels and traveling through lawful ports of entry. In 2021, American citizens accounted for more than 86% of fentanyl trafficking convictions. The radical distortions about immigration, Great Replacement, and who is bringing fentanyl into America may work to rev up the MAGA base, but they do absolutely nothing to solve our real-world problems. The flagship MAGA-driven Republican proposal, H.R. 29, the so-called Border Safety and Security Act, would effectively end the asylum program in America. That's not consistent with the founding values of our nation or the law today, which rejects the idea of returning people who have a well-founded fear of persecution back into the jaws of their oppressors. H.R. 29 is so extreme, some of our Republican colleagues are refusing to support it. One recently called it anti-American and unchristian. Mr. Chairman, there are many things we can do to improve our immigration laws and border enforcement if we set aside the myths and the disinformation. My colleagues and I ardently hope today's hearing will become a chance to search for bipartisan agreement rather than another missed opportunity by committee Republicans to join with us in conducting meaningful oversight towards comprehensive reform. Turning this into more bad political theater will just extend the long pattern of failure on this question. For years, Republicans on this committee refused to conduct oversight of President Trump's disastrous and cruel border policies. They were silent in 2019 when the U.S. Customs and Border Protection declared a humanitarian crisis at the border. They refused to join with Democrats in opposing Orwellian policies that ripped thousands of little children from the arms of their parents and sent them away to vanish into a Kafkaesque bureaucracy. Some may wish we would forget one of the grimmest chapters of any American presidency, but people will not be fooled when MAGA Republicans pretend to cry foul over Secretary Mayorkas's and President Biden's strong actions today to impose order at the border while defending America's deepest values. It doesn't have to be this way. Let's act together in good faith now to pass comprehensive reforms to improve our immigration system. We are a nation of immigrants, and we are a nation of laws, and we can live up to all of our values in this challenge. I look forward to the testimony of our witnesses and the thoughts of our colleagues, and I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and yield back.
The ranking member yields back. Before I introduce the witnesses, I feel compelled to respond to a couple of things my friend, the distinguished ranking member, said. First of all, the Republicans' lack of oversight. I want to remind everyone, this is the first time since Joe Biden's been president that anyone representing the border has been asked to come before this committee. The first time. And this crisis has gotten worse every day over 2 years. This is the first time. So the other thing, I want to remind members of the member decorum, because two things have just been brought to my attention in the last few minutes. First of all, the White House's oversight spokesman just released a memo criticizing Republicans for having the nerve to have this hearing. He said, why do House Republicans want to make things worse at the border? I don't understand how two frontline Border Patrol agents coming before this committee would make things worse. I mean, that's what the Oversight Committee is about. That's what Mr. Raskins complained, that Republicans weren't serious about oversight. This is our first, we've just been in power a week, and we've had a COVID pandemic hearing, and now we have frontline workers just to get facts. And the other thing that's very disturbing is the tweet that the Oversight Committee Democrats just tweeted out. It says, good morning and good luck to everyone except GOP oversight members who are using today's hearing to amplify white nationalist conspiracy theories instead of comprehensive solution to protect our borders and strengthen our immigration system. I mean, really? I don't even know what to say about that. But just to remind everyone, the member decorum, the issues we're debating are important ones that members feel deeply about. While vigorous disagreement is part of the legislative process, members are reminded that we must adhere to established standards of decorum in debate. It's a violation of House rules and the rules of this committee to engage in personalities regarding other members or to question the motives of a colleague. So remarks of the type that we just saw in the tweet are not permitted by the rules and are not in keeping with the best traditions of our committee. So the chair will enforce these rules of decorum at all times, and I urge all members to be mindful of their remarks. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce our two witnesses today, who are both long-term veterans of the U.S. Border Patrol, bringing a combined 5 decades of experience. John Modlin, I hope I pronounced that right, has served in the U.S. Border Patrol for 26 years. He is currently the Chief Patrol Agent for the Tucson sector, but has extensive experience serving on the northern and southern border, as well as both U.S. coasts during his career. Gloria Chavez has also served in the U.S. Border Patrol for 26 years. She is the Chief Patrol Agent for the Rio Grande Valley sector and also recently served as Chief Patrol Agent in the El Paso sector. She also brings a variety of experiences with the northern and southern borders of the United States. I look forward to hearing from Chief Modlin and Chief Chavez about their experiences with the U.S. Border Patrol, as well as their efforts to work to secure the border during an unprecedented time. Prior to your all's opening statements, pursuant to Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hands. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witnesses all answered in the affirmative, and we will begin with you, Chief Modlin.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, real quick, and I apologize. I know the proceedings of the committee room. I'm just going to cut to the chase. For my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who want to state that we're using this hearing for white nationalism, I'm not doing that. So if you feel that strongly, come walk to this side of the room and let's talk about it face to face. But leave that kind of silly stuff for somebody else. Don't bring that here today. This stuff is serious. I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a question down here? Just in response to, well, it's okay for him to talk, but not for me? As a new member, I have a question just in terms of the rules and the personalities. I didn't see that, my understanding is that the prohibition against personalities relates to calling out individual members. Am I wrong about that? Or is there something about the tweet that actually engaged in personalities, just so we know going forward?
We're just starting in this committee. We had a good, productive, substantive hearing last week. This hopefully will be a good, productive information, fact-gathering hearing today, and every member needs to understand the rules of decorum. Now,
Thank you.
Chief Modlin, please begin your opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman Comer, Ranking Member Raskin, distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today on behalf of the United States Border Patrol and to provide you with a status and understanding of the unique operational picture of border security efforts in Tucson sector. I started my career with the Border Patrol in 1995 in the San Diego sector. In the 27 years since, I have led border security efforts on our northern border in the Detroit sector, at Border Patrol headquarters here in Washington, D.C., on our coastal border as the chief of the Miami sector, and now as the chief patrol agent of the Tucson sector. A few moments ago, I characterized this area as unique, as the current migration flow and challenges in the Tucson sector are vastly different to many other sectors across the nation, and to what is widely reported in the media. The Tucson area of responsibility covers 262 linear miles of border, roughly 18,000 square miles of mostly desert wilderness and mountain ranges that extend immediately north of the border. Putting this figure in perspective, the area is more than twice the size of the country of El Salvador. In summer, temperatures can exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and in winter can fall below freezing. The environment is arduous and inhospitable, presenting significant challenges for our agents and potentially life-threatening conditions for migrants. Last year, Tucson sector agents responded to over 3,500 lost, or distressed migrants who needed to be rescued or required emergency medical care. Many of these were difficult and dangerous mountain rescues, putting agents' lives in danger. The most notable factor that sets Tucson apart from the rest of the southwest border is the migrant demographic. It is not what you see on the news. Tucson sector is not encountering large family groups with small children waiting for Border Patrol agents to pick them up and process them. In Tucson, the vast majority of encounters are single adult males attempting to avoid detection. The smuggling organizations to our south are very well organized and resourceful. Each and every person crossing through the Tucson sector must pay these criminal organizations. These criminal organizations employ various tactics to move thousands of migrants illegally across the border. Nearly all migrants we encounter are completely outfitted and camouflaged by the smuggling organizations before they cross. Most run from and may fight our agents to avoid apprehension. Many are previously deported felons who know they are inadmissible to the United States, and many pose a serious threat to our communities. For example, task saturation is a term we use to describe a tactic where smuggling organizations split large groups of migrants into many smaller groups. These small groups are then directed to illegally cross the border all at once and at different locations, effectively saturating the area with migrants and exhausting our response capability. This tactic, coupled with the remoteness of the area, has a compounding effect and results in large areas of the border being left vulnerable, while our agents are responding, rescuing, apprehending, and transporting hundreds of migrants. Smuggling organizations also leverage technology. For a fee, migrants are provided with a smartphone with routes and updates to guide themselves over the mountains and across the desert. More concerning is the smuggling organizations' use of social media to recruit inexperienced smuggling load drivers, in many cases American teenagers, who race down to the border to overload their parents' vehicles with migrants for what they are misled to believe is a quick and inconsequential payday. However, they are wrong. Tucson sector prosecutes more smuggling cases than any other sector on the southwest border. Migrant encounters in the Tucson sector have increased significantly over the past several years. In 2020, our total encounters were 66,000. That figure nearly tripled in 2021 and then quadrupled last year. We closed last year, 2022, with over 250,000 encounters in Tucson. 216,000 of those were single adults. That is a 257% increase in just 2 years. At present, Tucson sector is experiencing a 20% increase in encounters compared to last year. In closing, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the service, dedication, and sacrifice of the men and women of the U.S. Border Patrol's Tucson sector. In these challenging times, I continue to be amazed by their daily efforts to keep our country safe. Both our uniformed and professional staff have demonstrated great commitment and resiliency in this ever-changing environment. It is both humbling and an honor to lead this truly professional group of people.